Hello and welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of To The Point. I'm Karim Gamaluddin, and I'm filling in today for my dear colleague Dina Osman. Dear viewers, moving on to our topic for today, we're going to be talking about climate change. Climate change is one of the major challenges facing the world, and of course, in light of the unprecedented global emergency that the world is facing with the COVID-19 pandemic and so on and so forth. And to shed more light on this topic, we're most delighted to be joined today on To The Point by Dr. Ayman Ibrahim Abdul Wahhab, and he's a United Nations Environment and Risk Management Senior Advisor, to tell us more about his insights and more details about this very interesting topic of climate change. A very good evening, Doctor, and thank you so much for joining us on To The Point.
Thank you for having me tonight.
Yes, Dr. Ayman, first of all, if you can tell us about an overview of what Egypt is doing towards climate change and reducing carbon emissions, which is, of course, very harmful to the environment.
Well, climate change is a very interesting and challenging issue. And to start with, climate change is very persistent, and we are already facing and witnessing what climate change is doing to the world. Mm-hmm. And as we can see that we are experiencing heat waves, cold waves, rains in different parts of the world, hurricanes, and all these different types of phenomena. And as we all know, that it started with what we call global warming, and then we changed the terminology to climate change, because it's not warming all the time, but there are different episodes of heat and cold and these severe weather conditions. And actually, we have to define our standpoint in this regard. Regarding climate change, many people are talking about reducing the carbon dioxide emissions. And actually, we have to be aware that we, as Egypt, we are not responsible of a great portion of these emissions. And we have to be very careful. What do we have to do regarding this issue? My opinion, my scientific opinion in this regard, is that we have to invest more in adaptation, and we don't have to waste our investments in abating the carbon dioxide emissions. Although this might not be liked by some views, but to be practical, adaptation is the secret word in future. And it's not only for climate change, but it can go on also for pandemics. Mm-hmm. And COVID-19, as we all witnessed, many people now know exactly how to deal with it. But COVID-19 is not the end of the story. We have to be prepared for any type of pandemics in future. Mm-hmm. So there should be some kind of think tank to be prepared, to prepare for any future events. And it's very interesting to know that there is a very obvious link between climate change and pandemics. If we go deep into this issue, we will discover that pandemics are one of the consequences of climate change. If you ask me what is the link between pandemics and climate change, I will tell you that because of climate change, people are going to go more deep into unexplored areas, into forests. They will have to make more exploitation to forest resources to provide sustenance for themselves and for their families. Mm-hmm. So there will be more interaction between humans and between animals. And different viruses and microbes are living within different animal species, but there is some sort of balance, and they can live with it without being harmed that much. Like if we go back in history, we will remember that HIV started with chimps, and then through what we call the bushmeat, you know, the humans started eating bushmeat, chimp meat, and coming deep into the forest. Then it happens that the virus jumps, we call it virus jump, from animals to humans. And after that, it become a permanent host into humans, and
something that we're still suffering from until today.
Exactly. And as we all know that there are new strains of COVID, so we are facing more challenges, and it's more easily spreading, and the negative impact of it is more severe than the first COVID-19 that was discovered. To be honest with you, that we have to be prepared, because this is not the end of it. There are going to be, I don't want to spread panic, you know, but we have to be realistic that COVID-19 is not going to disappear. It's here and it's going to stay. But with all the measures that the world is taking by, you know, vaccines, by protecting themselves against infections, by wearing masks, by better hygiene, all these measures are going to curb the negative impact of the COVID-19. And my belief is that it's going to become like the seasonal flu. You know, we are living with flu, and I believe that this is going to be the case with COVID.
Mr. Ayman, allow us to take a look at this report about Egypt striving to be one of the leading countries to reduce carbon emissions. Dear viewers, let's take a look at this report about climate change and carbon emissions and Egypt's efforts towards curbing the spread of carbon emissions. And we'll be back to resume to the point with our guest here in the studio. Stay tuned.
Minister of Environment Yasmin Fuad said the ministry has been working on developing a general framework for the national strategy for climate change. During a meeting, the minister gave an overview of the ministry's achievements over the past 2 years. These included extended efforts and climate change projects undertaken by the ministry since 2018 to mitigate the negative effects of climate change, whether at the national or global levels. One of the most significant achievements is the completion of a 3-phase project to develop an interactive map for Egypt's vulnerability to climate change, which is being carried out in cooperation with the Egyptian Meteorological Authority, the EMA, and the National Water Research Center, the NWRC, of the Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation. The project aims to assist decision makers in identifying areas vulnerable to climate change in such a matter that could affect the state's development projects, taking measures necessary to deal with this risk. The ministry is not only trying to handle the effects of climate change, but also trying to reduce carbon emissions that cause the climate change. This is by developing projects such as the Renewable Energy Financing Framework Project that will support Egypt in meeting its target of 20% renewable energy generation by 2022. Last week, the president of the 26th United Nations Climate Change Conference, Alok Sharma, visited Egypt to discuss how countries can work together to address climate change challenges. He discussed with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs the Egyptian vision and priorities in climate change negotiations and ways to make those negotiations succeed during the next conference of the parties to be held in Glasgow, the UK, next November. The Egyptian side expressed its commitment to continue efforts to make climate change negotiations a success, which was recently embodied by submitting an official offer to host the COP27 in Egypt in 2022 as a representative of the African continent.
And dear viewers, that was a report looking into Egypt's efforts to curb carbon emissions and to eliminate carbon emissions and to have a green environment. Your take, sir, on this report?
Well, actually, Egypt is taking very big steps in this regard. Mm-hmm. But we have to take into consideration that nations have to collaborate together, because climate change is a global issue and it needs a global effort. And I would like to stress on the fact that the big emitter of global warming gases have to bear the big chunk of this matter. Mm-hmm. And actually, we have to take this opportunity of the new administration in the United States of America, and they are coming back to admit and believe in climate change, and their support is coming back. And we have to make serious negotiations with big countries and big emitters, that they have to put their share to assist our country in facing the climate change, because there are so many consequences of climate change. It's going to affect the agriculture. The types of crops to be cultivated might be affected. Even the lands which are able to be cultivated might be affected in this regard. The yield of the Nile, even the rain, some parts of Egypt depends on rain for agriculture, like the northern western coast in Matruh governorate. So all these issues we have to negotiate with financial bodies like the World Bank and the United Nations to assist us in this regard. And as I mentioned, we have to stress on adapting. How are we going to adapt when climate change become more obvious and more severe? If we talk about the global view, there are going to be environmental immigrations. There are going to be environmental refugees. Mm-hmm. People are going to move from parts of the world to other parts who are not hit hard by climate change. And we're talking about hundreds of millions. So this is going to happen, whether we like it or not, is going to happen. And we have to be prepared for it, because everybody will be affected. So that's why it's a collaborative effort, and it's a global issue that have to be addressed on a global measure.
Mr. Ayman, what are the current bottlenecks that Egypt is facing when it comes to climate change, and how can we overcome them?
This is a very good question. Actually, one of the most important issues is the lowland areas in Egypt that are going to be affected. And actually, this already started in the northern eastern part of Egypt, where we have lowlands, and there is a phenomenon called saltwater intrusion, where salt water intrude into the underground water, and then it becomes not suitable for agriculture. And there is a very big area in this region that need to be elevated, and already farmers who are capable and have the financial resources started to elevate these areas by transporting soil and sand and elevating these areas to get away from the salty part of the water so that they can still cultivate their lands. So there should be new techniques, there should be new technology. And actually, there is a book published recently by Bill Gates about how to combat climate change. And it's very enlightening because he took it from a technological point of view. The traditional way of combating climate change is not going to work by just trying to depend on electric cars instead of fuel cars and all the rest of it. He's talking about big industries that nobody is talking about, like the steel industry, the cement industry. These industries are hardly affecting the climate change in the negative way, and nobody is even touching this kind of industry. So we have to be very bold in this regard. We have to address all these issues, because even if all the cars are turned from petrol to electricity, it's not going to solve the problem. We have to tackle the industrial sector in this regard. And climate change is a very big challenge, because now we exceeded 7 billion capita, and there are many studies that put the margin of 6 billion is the maximum bearing capacity of planet Earth. And now we are exceeded that by 1 billion, and it's increasing. So the problem is getting more complicated by the explosion of population, especially in the underdeveloped world, which are going to be much more hard hit by climate change. So again, this is a global effort, and Egypt, in its situation and its geographical location and its historical role in politics and in getting engaged in such big issues, we still have to be playing a big role in this regard. And we started already this, but we have to put more effort in this regard.
Dr. Ayman, also, how do you see Egypt's efforts in digging in for alternative or green alternatives for energy, such as the Binban solar power plant, for instance, and other resources? How do you see that as an expert?
Well, actually, Egypt is very lucky in this regard, because if we look at the number of days with sunshine, it's more than 300 something days per year. So we have lots of sunshine. We can explore, this source of energy, which is renewable, sustainable, and like you mentioned, Binban project is a very leading project, and is a very good example, and we can build on that. Also, we have the wind energy, and we started doing some experimental wind farms in Za'farana, Ras Gharib, and along the line of Red Sea. We have a very useful wind speed in this stretch of the country. We can utilize this more. Going back to the solar panels and how to utilize solar energy, we have to put into consideration the ethical part of harnessing solar energy, because with this huge number of solar panels, there should be an architectural aspect taken into consideration, and this is already happening all over the world. That it doesn't have to look ugly. It has to have a beautiful, scene at the same time, and while it's performing its original function of harnessing the solar energy. Now the solar panels are part of the design in different houses, in different factors, in different structures. Even they're part of the glazing system of buildings. They're trying to make every part of the building an environmental melting with the environment and being a useful source of energy, harnessing the sun while it's performing another function. So this has to be taken into consideration while we are exploiting the solar energy, the wind energy, and all the rest of it. We can also build on that by collaborating with nearby countries and linking with the grids, and this is already started taking place, but we have to put more effort in this regard. But we are very lucky to have this kind of resources. Some northern countries don't have this luxury of enjoying the sun and being able to harness the sun energy year round. So we have to stress on this point.
Dr. Ayman, also as an expert, the lessons learned from the pandemic that has brought the whole world to a standstill and the environment.
Yeah, well, lesson learned is preparedness. We have to be prepared. Actually, there are so many researches that took place even in 2015.
Even before the pandemic.
Even before the pandemic, 4 years or 5 years before the pandemic, that expected that if anything that going to cost human life like 5 million or 10 million, it's not going to be a nuclear war. It's not going to be a traditional war. It's going to be a virus. And it was stated that it is going to be a virus. So scientists gave an early warning, but nobody listened. Even the biggest countries in the world, the United States, they were not prepared.
And we're seeing them struggling today.
And they are struggling more than any other country in the world.
Indeed.
And actually, the States is a very bad example because there are many factors in this regard, but preparedness is
key.
Is the key. Preparedness is the key. And actually, we, as a nation, we have very good awareness now. Everybody knows how to deal with the pandemic. At the beginning of the pandemic, there was two camps. The first camp, the panic camp, that they panicked.
Paranoid.
And they like washing their hands all day round and afraid from getting mixed with people and staying at home and all the rest. The other camp, they are careless. They don't believe in it. They say that it's not here. They are denying that it's already affecting people and that it's just a propaganda. But now we have become one camp, which is the moderate camp. We know that pandemic is there. It's costing human life, but at least we know how to deal with it. And this is a very good outcome of the pandemic. We have to build on that. We have to increase awareness, and we have to utilize the research centers that we already have. We have very reputable research centers in Egypt, the National Research Center. We have the universities. We have all this. We have to utilize them. We have to encourage them. We have to put some funds in these centers. We are not less than any country that are working in the R&D. We should contribute. We shouldn't be only receiving from other countries. We have been leading the world. If we go back in history, we have been leading the world. Most of the time span. And we have to come back to that. We have to play our role that we should play in this world.
Mr. Ayman, moving on to another aspect, the newly appointed U.S. administration and its stance towards climate change. And as we have seen, the predecessor of Joe Biden had a very hostile stance towards any UN or climate summits or conferences for the sake of saving the environment. What do you think, or what are your expectations of the new administration's stance towards the environment and preserving the environment in light of climate change?
Well, actually, the Biden administration have taken a very positive step in this regard. They are back to the world. They have been separating themselves from the world, and they put America first, which was a very wrong step in the wrong direction. But now they are coming back, and we as Egypt, we have to benefit from that. We have to open channels with these teams that Biden administration appointed, and we have to open discussion with them. We have to put down our point of view regarding the impact of climate change on Egypt, and we have to be very open about that. We play a key role in the area, and we have the right to get a helping hand from the states. So I believe that we have to open discussion channels between them to get some technical help, some financial help. That's how nations deal together and countries deal together. There is no shame about that, and we have mutual benefits in this regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Ayman, also allow me to move on to another aspect, which is the recent visit by the UN head of the climate change division to Egypt. How do you see the importance or the significance of this visit to Egypt?
Well, it's very important because, as I mentioned, that Egypt has a very unique situation in this regard. And Egypt is looked at by the Middle East and Africa as the role model in this regard. So this visit is a landmark that Egypt should be leading in this regard. And actually, the African continent is going to be hit hard by climate change. And as I mentioned, that environment migration and environmental refugees is a very big problem that is already blooming in the horizon. And it's going to affect all the northern countries, including Egypt. And as I can see, the Egyptian diplomacy is going back to the continent after long time of absence. So this is a very good move. And we have to collaborate with all the African nations in this regard. And we have to open channels with the United Nations and with the USA in this regard. There should be like a task force in this regard, because this is coming, this problem is coming and is going to affect all countries, including Egypt, and we have to be leaders in this regard.
Yes. Mr. Ayman, also I would like to know from you about Egypt's efforts towards preserving the environment and being cautious of climate change and all the repercussions of climate change.
Well, actually, the Ministry of Environment has taken, very good steps in this regard. We have the protectorate program. I have seen lots of them, and they have a very good institutional system. And I think we can be leaders in this regard. But this has to expand. And actually, the new project that is going in Manzala Lake, there's a very huge project under the auspices of the president to revive this lake. There was lots of backfilling. There was lots of illegal buildings in this regard, but all these are being, rectified, and the lake is coming into life again, and even the fishermen started to feel this, that the different species of fishes are coming back, and the water, the quality of water started to improve, and the wastewater coming from Bahr al-Baqar drain now is being treated. So Egypt is taking a very ambitious and very good steps in this regard. We have to build on that. We have to collaborate with other nations. We have to seek the help of financially capable nations to help us abate the climate change consequences, not only on Egypt, but on the entire African continent. And when this happens, when the environmental migration takes place, it's going to affect the whole world, because it's going to be like a hurricane. Millions of people are going to move, and nobody can stop them.
Yes. Dr. Ayman, speaking about impact, we cannot forget Greta Thunberg, which is an influencer in this field that has inspired many and brought the issue of climate to the light. Your comment on that?
Well, she's very inspiring, and she's very influential, as you said, and there is a resonance of her, legacy in Egypt, and but like I said, all this effort had to come together. No single person is going to be as effective as we would like to have. There should be a collaborative effort between different institutions, between different entities, and this should be led by the Ministry of Environment. Our Ministry of Environment is, I have visited so many countries, and the institutional system in the ministry is very strong. We have regional offices covering the entire country. We have environmental unit in each governorate. So there is an effective and implementing arm of the ministry all over the country. You don't find this in many countries. So we have the institutional setup. We have this strong organization that can do a lot regarding sustainable fuel sources, renewable energy, adapting to climate change. They can do all this. And we as a country, we have to back them up. We have to give them all the support and all the help they need.
Yes. Dr. Ayman, we're discussing a very interesting and immense topic indeed, but would like to listen to your closing or your final remarks.
Well, my final remarks are my starting remarks, which is we have to be prepared, we have to be realistic. We as a country, we as a nation, we have all the potentials to put us at the front line for climate change adapting, for providing sustainable energy, for harnessing the solar energy, for utilizing the wind that we have. We have all these potentials. We have to put all this together, and we have to support it by all means.
Dr. Ayman Ibrahim Abdul Wahhab, UN Environment and Risk Management Senior Advisor. We really appreciate your insight and your presence with us here on To The Point on only on Nile TV International. We really thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm always happy to be with you.
The pleasure is all ours, sir.
Thanks.
And dear viewers, picking on just what our guest has said, Egypt has the potential and Egypt has the resources. All what we need is preparedness and adaptation. And dear viewers, by this we wrap up tonight's episode of To The Point on Nile TV International. You're in the company of myself, Karim Gamaluddin, and till we meet again, this is goodbye.